Hello everybody and welcome to Boxing Science TV. In this episode we speak to the head of strength conditioning at Team GB Boxing, Mark Campbell. We'll be sharing the different ways that he gets athlete and coach buy-in to the programme and the What It Takes to Win model for GB Boxing. We'll be discussing the use of sports psychology from Vasyl Lomachenko and the different methods that you can use in your preparation. Hello everyone and welcome to Boxing Science TV episode 11. Hope you're all well and looking forward to the festive period. As we come to the end of 2017, we're going to be releasing quite a few different videos reflecting on the year, the best bits of boxing science, stuff that we put on our YouTube channel and Instagram, highlights of our projects, our training methods and the success that athletes have in the ring. And two really good projects that I'm proud of this year. One of them is a combat conditioning conference, and this is the reason why we're going to be sharing the Mark Campbell interview with you today. And also the Ultimate Coaching for Combat Sports workshop. We did our first workshop in October, a weekend spent in Feltham, London, where we have 15 coaches spend some time with us learning about the science behind boxing, the physiological demands of combat sports, the different training methods that we use to make our boxers fitter, faster and stronger. Everyone left there with increased knowledge and given the tools to apply that knowledge in a practical setting to make their athletes even better. Our next date for the Ultimate Coaching for Combat Sports workshop is on the 13th and 14th of January in the same location again, Tribe 1 Gym in Feltham. The link is in the description below this video. We've got early bird offer on at the minute, so if you book your place before December 29th, you'll save £100 and you'll be able to kickstart 2018 with boxing science. If London isn't your preferred location and you prefer us to visit another city in the UK or even outside the UK, fill in the form underneath that link where you can register your interest and tell us where you want our next workshop to be. So here's a trailer for the workshop, and after that we'll kick on with this episode. That can translate massively to combination punching. So we want a strong, fast and explosive athlete. We'll make sure that it's done in a controlled, dynamic way. Like I said in the introduction, one of my favourite projects of Boxing Science 2017 was our Combat Conditioning online conference. We shared over 10 different online workshops, webinars, video presentations, video interviews with some of the leading practitioners in boxing and combat sports. We covered strength conditioning, conditioning methods, physiology, sports psychology. We learnt from practitioners in Team GB at the Australian Institute of Sport as well. And one of the favourite workshops, actually voted by the members of the conference, was the Science Behind GB Boxing, my interview and presentation with Mark Campbell. So I'd like to share a little bit of that interview with you, where we learn more about Mark's background, how he gets coach and athlete buy-in. We'll also discuss the What It Takes to Win model, which is prevalent across all sports, Team GB, and Mark's going to explain how that is applied to GB Boxing. it's Danny Wilson from Boxing Science, and today I'm very happy to have on a video presentation with me, lead strength and conditioning coach for GB Boxing, Mark Campbell. Now, GB Boxing has been on the rise for over a number of years now, and that's a lot down to the support of the English Institute of Sport with the facilities and the services and the team that they've got for the GB Boxing. Now, Mark's going to give us a little bit of an insight over an interview, a bit of a presentation to the strength training and conditioning training that he puts the GB Boxing lads through, and also some of the testing and monitoring and the training models that are built by the EIS for GB Boxing. So Mark will start off by saying a quick hello and a little bit of introduction about you, how you got into this position, and a little bit about your background, your strength and conditioning journey.
Thanks, Danny, for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today and your viewers and listeners. I guess my background, obviously, I'm a New Zealander, so I did my sports science degree at Otago University in New Zealand. From there, I worked at the Human Performance Centre, which was a commercial branch of the university that incorporated the initial startings of the New Zealand Academy of Sport, which I guess is the equivalent of the English Institute of Sport. That was way back in 2000. From there, being a Kiwi, and obviously the one main avenue of sport to work in is rugby, and so it was rugby from 2001 really. I worked in the national provincial competition 2001, and then had a couple of years overseas working in Australia in the Australian Institute of Sport system for a year in Darwin, which was warm to say the least. And then I came back and I was 3 years with one of the Super Rugby sides that competes in the interprovincial international competition in the Southern Hemisphere. And then once that contract had finished for me, I was very lucky to get applied for and was appointed as the senior strength and conditioning coach with the English Institute of Sport based in Sheffield. So that was way back in 2007. So I've had a few changes of sports. So I've worked with a wide variety of sports, but boxing is one that's been very stable in Sheffield for a very, very long time. And as you mentioned, Danny, it's been on the rise and it's progressed really, really well.
Fantastic. So this presentation is around about your role within strength and conditioning for the GB Boxing lads, and it's very tempting to get stuck into talking about strength training and what you actually do with them. But I want to take the listeners on and the viewers on a little bit of a journey like the boxers will be. So if a boxer's coming to you for the first time, they've just been signed up to the GB Boxing program, they're pretty successful at a junior, youth level, and maybe at a senior level as well. They had to win some sort of national title to get enrolled onto the GB Boxing program, probably represented England quite a few times already. So when they walk into the gym, they're going to be quite successful without probably doing strength and conditioning before. So what are the first steps that you take to kind of build up trust and buy-in from the athletes? And as well, if you could elaborate with the coaches as well, because they've obviously got a really strong CV and a lot of experience to be working on the international level with their own kind of training methods. How do you get the athlete and the coach buying into strength and conditioning?
I think with the athlete, it's really just about communicating the benefits, and also you'd be surprised actually how many of them have actually engaged in some form of strength and conditioning. The majority of them, that engagement will be through some sort of circuit training with the sport-based, predominantly around a sort of a metabolic output in the competition arena. But a lot of them do understand, especially the heavier weight classes, they do understand the benefits and the positives that come from being strong. I guess that buy-in then is just about getting them to trust us, to understand that we're there for them and we really want the best for them as far as their physical preparation goes, and to show them, the role models that have gone before them and what they've done. So there's been a lot of boxers have come through, have really engaged strongly in S&C, and it gets better every sort of cohort we have in. They all tend to get better with the training. They're more professional. They do understand the need to be strong. And it's just those simple explanations. Strength doesn't necessarily, there's no guarantee that it's going to translate directly to performance, but there's an indirect benefit in being more robust, having stronger tendons and ligaments, because load is one of those things that strengthens those structures, and it allows them predominantly the main thing it allows them to do is train more and compete more at the highest level of boxing. And that for me is the defining factor in improving performance. Having boxers away from training is one of the biggest sins that can happen for me as an S&C coach. That's my main driver. Yes, I believe some people will have physical qualities that will be enhanced, that will aid performance in the ring. Others maybe not so much. It's a less tangible sort of correlation to performance. But I think once the boxers know that we're willing to put in place sensible training, intelligent training, that really does have an impact on how they're performing day to day. They do buy in quite quickly. And I guess then it's just about being that S&C coach that listens, that trusts the athlete, that's willing to really try and understand what that individual needs in particular. We're in the fortunate position that we can individualize quite a lot with our boxers. We see them enough to allow that to happen. And the ones who really do engage with that, they see the biggest benefits. So in terms of coach buy-in, I guess the biggest thing, Dan, is that the coaches are very busy with the actual boxing side of things. So what I feel is, yes, we may take a different approach to how we condition the boxers, and it's based on years of experience in conditioning athletes. The coaches are willing to buy into new ideas. They're very intelligent coaches, and they like to, a lot of them are very curious about the new ideas that we're putting in place. But most importantly, we're offering them a support that realistically, if it was just them, they'd struggle to get the boxers into that sort of shape just because of the time demands of the program. And again, sort of emphasizing along the lines of what I talked about with athletes, it is paramount that these boxers are getting the best technical work with their boxing coaches as much as possible. And if the coaches are dragged away from that into doing the auxiliary work, which strength and conditioning is, then that can sort of be to the detriment of that sort of side of their performance, which for me is the absolute key to their performance. And the coaches, as I said, they are interested in the methods that we use, and they're always curious about what we're delivering. And it's been, there's always been challenges. Coaches will always ask us, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? But in the end, if we can justify it and we can show the benefits of it to them, then they're happy to buy in. And we've had a good run now where we've delivered boxers in very, very good shape to some major tournaments to allow them to perform. So there hasn't been too many doubts about their physical preparation.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that is really, really good start point. Instead of like going, right, this is what we do, strength training, running training, what you've made it straight out to be is an athlete-centered program. And that's something that we preach at Boxing Science. We're there to make them better at their sport. We're not there to, to get the best squatter, the best runner, whatever. We're there to make them better at their sport. So going on to what it takes to win model. Now this has been quite well recognised in sports that are quite linear or quite controlled in terms of physical performance, like cycling and rowing. We're talking about, right, we need to get the boxers technically better. So how does the What It Takes to Win model work in a sport that has so many different variables, such as like punch selection, strength, speed, fitness as well? How does What It Takes to Win model work within the GB boxing?
So from a What It Takes to Win point of view for the strength and conditioning side of things, or the GB physical preparation team, as we like to call ourselves, we've got a very good physiologist that works with us. This is our main philosophy about what we're trying to do with the GB boxers. So we really want to emphasize that what we're trying to do is give the boxing coaches the best physically prepared amateur boxers to support what they do with them. Because as I mentioned, it really is about the technical and tactical requirements of world-class boxing and developing those that will enhance their performance. So from a point of view of S&C, I guess we've just narrowed it down a bit. Boxing to us is about repeated high-intensity boxing efforts. And boxing movement is really about attack and defense. So from that boxing movement point of view, the factors that are going to be key to that ability are going to be speed and agility, and also a very, very good anaerobic system, because obviously the anaerobic system is the one that sort of defines the explosive capabilities and the speed capabilities of a boxer, but also the ability to do that at a very high intensity. And recovering from those high intensity efforts, you're going to need obviously you're going to need a very good very good aerobic system. And delivering those those high intensity efforts, you're going to need a very good anaerobic system. So people always talk about lactate being the enemy, but actually, as a marker, boxers that can produce high levels of lactate actually have an anaerobic system that shows it can deliver high intensity efforts. So a more aerobic athlete won't be able to get to those levels, and therefore you'll see an athlete that probably in the boxing ring probably goes at a more steady state throughout their bout and can't lift to those levels. Certainly there are some boxers that can be quite successful with that sort of approach, but they have to be very, 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 very fit and have a huge work rate. The majority of the boxers that are successful are the ones that can really turn the gears up and go through that speed to really dominate an opponent. So that's from the physical side. From the boxing side, there is a technical model that sits alongside that, and there are overlaps there. And so that's how, as you say, Danny, we've sort of tried to tie in the two sides, the technical and the physical, have tried to tie in a what it takes to win model in a very mixed sport as far as technical, tactical, all these various factors. But with us being able to stick with this philosophy of making sure we've got the best physically prepared amateur boxers, we believe we're going to be enhancing that technical and tactical side, and therefore we believe we're contributing to the what it takes to win model for our boxers to be successful.
How does your kind of training, so your talent ID, fit into this model and your fitness testing? How do you grade that boxers actually, the boxers coming into the program are good in this, and what areas do they need to improve on?
Interestingly enough, when I started in 2007, I was actually the head strength and conditioning coach for boxing. Another good S&C coach, Ian Piper, took over for the London cycle. But during that Beijing cycle, there was actually talk about us wanting GB boxing program wanting to roll out fitness testing to boxers at all levels to make sure they've got the physical requirements. But my argument with that was, you wouldn't choose a boxer based on physical qualities. Essentially, the selection of a boxer onto our program is first and foremost determined by boxing ability. So as you mentioned, Danny, the boxers that actually get onto our program are very good youths and juniors, and they're sort of identified through that route. And also they are ones that have performed very well at the senior level at the ABAs and the national championships and for England. Yes, there's probably been some boxers that have performed quite well at the ABA level that haven't quite made it onto our program, and that can sometimes be the difference between the national versus the international style of boxing, and that didn't quite suit them. But for the majority, the thing that really selects them onto our program and gives them the best opportunity of getting on is their boxing ability. From there, the testing that we do with them physically during an assessment camp or anything like that is really just to give us a bit of a guide as to what we may need to work on when they come in. You're not going to stop. You're not going to select a boxer because they haven't got a good 1 and 3K run, or they're not quite strong enough. Things that you can actually change physically with good, hard physical work. If Rob McCracken says to me, "Mark, this boxer is amazing, he's the most talented boxer ever," and then we test and they come back as probably they're not fit enough, or we don't think they've got the strength that's going to allow them to train as hard as they want, I've got to really, essentially what I've been challenged with is doing the work to make sure they can get to those levels.
That's brilliant. So basically you're saying that the strength and the speed stuff, we can actually catch up and make them better, but essentially it's skill that determines whether they're good enough for GB boxing.
That's right. Yeah, without that skill, if you're not winning or coming close to winning at the ABA level, you're going to probably struggle once it gets to the international level from a skill technical point of view. Certainly, the boxing coaches in the GB program would believe and do, I believe, do improve that skill and technical ability in relation to the tactics and the technique that's required to be successful at the international level. But there is a certain prerequisite level, and considering that most boxers, come onto the scene at a very young age, 18, 19, 20, 21 into our program, to have that skill means they've probably had years and years of it in their clubs. And it's a reflection for any club boxer that's on our program. So it's a great reflection of the club and the club coach, because for that club coach to have instilled those right skills and also the discipline to practice them regularly, those basics that are really, really key to being a great boxer, is paramount to their great work. So for me, as an S&C coach, that I guess that's what it takes to win model encapsulates, Danny, as you say. It encapsulates the fact that the highest level consideration is given to the sporting performance, and therefore it keeps you focused as an S&C coach, that you're not just in the gym putting things in place because you like them. You're putting them in place because you believe they will be impactful on performance, rather than just impactful on strength, as you said, like trying to get a big squat or trying to get a big bench press, or someone being able to do muscle ups. That's not necessarily what defines performance. You have to be quite clear about what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, fantastic. So we're still taking this boxer on a journey. They've come in, they've done the testing. Before we do the heavy bench and the heavy squat, we've got to look at their movement dysfunctions and common injuries that we see in boxing. What are the kind of movement dysfunctions that you see with boxers that are coming in onto the program?
I guess movement dysfunctions aren't. I mean, we obviously look at muscular conditioning, isolated muscular conditioning around areas that we know are going to take a hammering in training. So your calf, your hamstring. Trunk conditioning is important to assess to make sure. Obviously, the main thing around trunk conditioning is lower back, which gets a lot of work in boxing. And then also we do a push-up and an inverse row test, which gives us some indication of shoulder health. So the areas obviously that movement dysfunction. Dysfunction is a funny word to use in any sport for me, because I think sport in itself sometimes creates dysfunction by the nature of the sport. So boxing, for example, you're going to get those rounded shoulders because they're in that defensive position or having to keep their guard up all the time. You sometimes get some tight hips because they're not exploring full ranges through their hips in their sport. So unless they've done a lot of auxiliary flexibility work, that's going to be quite tight. For us, the main thing is just obviously areas that are going to be injured often as a boxer. So if you punch someone in the head as your sport or your living, you're probably going to have sore hands. Elbows tend to be a problem for us, and shoulders amongst females tend to be a bit of an issue for us as well. So these are areas that we focus on, almost as prophylactic training, to make sure that those areas are strong and healthy. And regardless of whether anyone's had injuries, those are areas that we're going to really focus on. From a hamstring calf point of view, obviously the GB program believes that running is very, very important to the fitness levels of the boxers. I also feel it's very important from a rhythmical timing, stretch, shortening, speed point of view, which is obviously how I feel boxing movement sort of is created. It's a very reactive sort of thing, and I think that low-level running plyometric is very, very good for creating the endurance and the tissue quality that can handle doing those movements often. So obviously we want to make sure our boxers can run well and safely. So those are the key things. We do have, obviously, if there are serious movement dysfunctions that we believe are causing injury amongst individuals, we'll address them individually. But it's the general stuff is just put around hands, elbows, wrists, and shoulders, and then making sure hips are working well, and trunks strong as well.
Yeah. So almost sounds like you're bulletproofing the athletes rather than trying to make them really, really mobile and flexible athletes. You're almost like bulletproofing the areas that are going to take the most damage.
Yeah, in relation to the sport, Danny. Yeah, and you mentioned flexibility and mobility. Those qualities in particular are incredibly tough to change with mature athletes. When I say mature, I mean anyone that's gone through puberty and hasn't put that work in at a young age. As we see with athletes like gymnasts, who their sport requires it from an aesthetic point of view, their flexibility will be of a much higher level, just by nature of the stress that's been put on them in that physical quality. So we that sort of work. Some of that work that we may do with a boxer from a flexibility, mobility point of view may just be sort of auxiliary, and sometimes it's just about relaxing, taking out of that sympathetic sort of high stress, high excitement sort of environment that they work in physically all the time.
So the topic of this episode is the mind behind Vasyl Lomachenko. So Lomachenko is on the tip of everyone's tongues this week after absolutely schooling Rigondeaux. Rigondeaux, I made my views clear before the fight, actually on the fight night as well, putting it out on Instagram and on our Facebook pages, how I thought that Lomachenko are just going to be too big, too strong for Rigondeaux, and I thought that his boxing skills were going to be superior anyway. But the actual jump up for Rigondeaux was so big. It actually worked out a 7% increase in body mass. To put that in context, when Khan jumped up to fight Canelo, he only increased by 5%, and everyone was up in arms about him going up to face Canelo. And in fact, Rigondeaux put on 2% more body mass in relation to his weight. Yeah, so it was going to be a big task for Rigondeaux. It didn't really put on a great show for the fans, but we're here to talk about the main man, Lomachenko, and the science behind Lomachenko is that he's just an absolute genius at what he does. So skilled, so athletic. His movement is just fantastic, and you can watch any part of his fight and just be in absolute awe of it. So, and if you've got any young boxers in the gym, just show them a video of Lomachenko, and the stuff that he does is just fantastic. And one thing in the build-up, which was quite interesting, is that his promoter, Bob Arum, was talking about him working with a sports psychologist, and sports psychologists following him round all over the world, whether he's training in Ukraine or in America and towards where he's going to be fighting. The sports psychologist travels with him, and Bob Arum couldn't really tell us what he actually does with him, and that's mainly because they're speaking in their native language, so not being able to know exactly what he's doing. It's quite positive to hear that Lomachenko's got a sports psychologist with him, because whenever someone's had a sports psychologist before in boxing, it's seemed as like negative, or that they've got a weak mindset, or they've had to get over a loss or anything like that. Whereas Lomachenko, everything's been quite positive. He's won 2 Olympic golds. He's only ever lost twice, once as an amateur, once as a professional. He's become a world champion very soon within his career. And so he's using sports psychology in a positive way. And there's a lot of stigma with boxing and sports science in general. People have started to take on new conditioning methods, new strength and conditioning as well. However, people in boxing probably don't use sports psychology that much because they see it as a little bit of a weakness. From first-hand experience, when we've tried to do a seminar, we tried to get my colleague in, Dr. Pete Olasoga, to convince the boxers to start using sports psychology. And let's say that there were a few interesting discussions around it, and this seems to be the thought of you either got it or you haven't. You either got that mindset to go on and be a champion boxer, or you simply haven't got it. There is an element of truth to that. However, that's not what sports psychology is about. You can build your confidence, build your motivation, create some commitment strategies, goal setting, making sure that you're preparing right for competition, physically and mentally, visualization, ring walkthroughs, building like little models of like what if this happens and what if that, always having like a plan, almost like having a plan B, C and D, different things happen in a fight, and what about if you haven't got a plan to combat that? And that is sports psychology. And we did this in the combat conditioning conference. Pete did an interview with Jordan Gill, and he was dissecting the stuff that Jordan was saying and how that relates to the sports psychology research, and how we can build sports psychology into our training. So this next little clip is Pete introducing why sports psychology is important, why you should start to factor it within your preparation for your fights and your bouts and competition, and a few little tasks for you to start implementing sports psychology into your preparation.
Okay, so let's just stop here for a minute. Before we go any further, I've got a question that I'd like you to think about for a minute. And that question is, what exactly are the characteristics of a successful fighter? Now that's a big question, I know, but I want you to think about what it actually takes to be successful. Pause the video here, write down as many things as you can think of. Maybe think about a great fighter that you know and all of the characteristics that make them great. And when you've got a list, unpause the video and carry on. Okay, so I'm just guessing here, but I'd guess that you probably wrote down things that fall loosely into 5 different categories. We call those categories the 5 pillars of performance. So I'm guessing that you probably wrote down things that will fall loosely into the category of technical skills. You probably wrote down some things around tactical awareness, knowledge of opponents, ring craft, I guess you might call that. There's obviously no doubt that physical skills are an important: strength, stamina, speed, flexibility, and some of the lifestyle factors are really important for performance as well. Getting enough sleep, recovering, eating right. There's another thing that's important too, and that's mental fitness. So maybe you wrote down things like confidence or motivation or staying calm under pressure. These are really important aspects of top performance in any sport. And it's really important that we take care of all 5 of these pillars. We can't neglect any one of them. Now, it's probably true that you spend a lot of time working on technical and tactical stuff, but how much time do you actually take to specifically work on your mental fitness? Take a look again at the list that you wrote down, and how many things would you say fall into that mental fitness category? Is it a few? Is it a lot? It doesn't really matter, to be honest. The point is that if you're looking to get the best out of your performance, then you need to take care of all 5 of these pillars. Each one is as important as the others, so working on mental as well as physical fitness is one of the keys to success in any sport. Now, just take a moment to think, are you currently working on strengthening all 5 of your pillars? Just something to think about as we get back to the interview.
Okay. So what are some of the mental aspects of boxing then?
On fight night, you got all sorts of things. So like the schedule might not suit you. You might feel like you've overeaten, or someone might come into the ring with a different game plan than you, completely different game plan than you expected. All sorts, really. I mean, everything is, boxing's got so many different variables that any factor can just swing it. So, but in camp, obviously, boxing's a weight-controlled sport, so majority of fighters are always overweight and therefore in a calorific deficit through their training. This can have a mental strain. A lot of fighters have to sell a lot of tickets just to fight because it's a business. So and whilst you're training, you're selling tickets, you're not eating much. It's hard work. So yeah, there's a lot of factors.
Yeah, so a lot of things going on there in terms of the actual preparation for the fight. What about the fight itself? What are some of the perhaps mental aspects of getting in the ring?
Well, I think maybe the thought of it's worse than doing it, and I'm not sure. I don't know if I see it the way everybody else sees it, but I think you just get in there, and everything. What I like is when you get in there, and everybody else gets out, and there's just you and him, and obviously there's a ref there, but you don't see him, and there's just you and him in front of each other, and you've got to find a way to be better, and no matter what, you can't let him beat you. So that's what I like.
Okay.
It's like the ultimate the ultimate working man sport, and it's the ultimate sort of, it's like a gladiator contest, isn't it? And you want to prove that no matter what, they can't beat you.
So in that moment, you say when you get in the ring and everybody else clears out the ring and there's just you two guys in there, what's kind of going through your mind then?
For me, when then it's just you and him. There's no there's cameras there, but the crowd's not in there. You block everything out. All you've got to do is think. I don't know how. I'm a sort of person that just gets in there and does it rather than actually thinks about what happens. And
Right.
even when people ask me, what are you thinking at this point? It's hard. Yeah, I can't really think about it because it's just something that I do, and it's something that I've grown up doing. That I just get in there and try and nullify what they do and get across what I do and express myself in the way that I've been taught to, in the way that I've practiced to do all these years.
And you mentioned about the preparation before the fight, some of those different challenges. Talk to me a little bit more about how you prepare for a fight. Like I say, what are some of the challenges that you have to face? What are some of the perhaps ways that you get around some of those challenges?
I mean, when you're training at such high level and having to put the hours and the graft in, a lot of the times you're going to get injured and you have little niggles. So it's about working around these things. If you get a bad thumb, you're going to have to strap it up or just put an extra bit of padding on it. You can have days where you're just so tired and maybe you have a steady session, or instead if you have a long camp, then you can afford to have a session off, because realistically, in the grand scheme of things, the fitness wise, you're not going to suffer. So it's about taking it day by day, because it's a full-time job. So you have to take it day by day and see how you feel and just deal with things as they come. Obviously, you're going to get injuries, you're going to get setbacks, and you're going to have sparring partners pull out, or you're going to have this and that change, but you got to just focus on the main goal, and that's being in the best physical condition that you possibly can get in that ring, because at the end of the day, it's a dangerous sport, and you want to give yourself the best chance of coming out victorious with the least damage possible.
Yeah. So it's about working smart as well as working hard, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. I think nobody wants to finish their career early with brain damage or anything like that. So you want to be. Every boxer goes into boxing. Well, I would have thought so. Every boxer goes into boxing thinking, I want to come out with all my faculties, keep the good looks if you got any that you started with, or to the best ability you can, and come out with a bit of money and be successful.
So Jordan's been talking a lot here about preparing well, about working smart as well as working hard in the build-up to fights. You talked about some of the unexpected things that can happen in the build-up or during camps, those little niggles, injuries, setbacks, or just days when you might be fatigued from training. In preparation for any competition, it's really important to focus on the processes, the day-to-day things that are going to help you make those small improvements and help you build that confidence. But it's also important to keep the big picture in mind. So, training through an injury, for example, might seem like it's the tough thing to do. But you do need to ask yourself whether it's actually going to cause problems later on down the line. So keeping that big picture mentality is something that's also important to bear in mind. But in terms of mental preparation for competition, I like to break the preparation phase down into different segments. So while you might have a bit of a pre-fight routine already and know exactly what you're going to be doing in the hours leading up to the fight, do you have a routine for the morning of the fight, or the day before, or even the week before? And what should you be including in each preparation segment? So while it's obviously going to be down to you as an individual as to what works best for you, here's a few ideas of what might work well in pre-performance routines. So for example, the day before, have you done an equipment check? Can we check that off our list? Are we good to go? Perhaps a confidence check. How confident am I on a scale of 1 to 10? If it's maybe a little bit lower than I would like it to be, maybe I need to go and read some confidence reminders or think about all the training that I've done. just check in as to where you are in terms of confidence. Maybe some mental rehearsal, visualizing success, and maybe some relaxation the night before just to help you get off to sleep, for example. Depending on the segment in question, maybe a physical warm-up might be right. Again, thinking about the level that you need to be at various times. So an hour before the fight, think about how activated, how energized you are. Do you want to be functioning at 100% in the changing rooms an hour before the fight? Or is 80% good? Maybe 50% is right for you. Are you over or under activated? And if so, what can we do about that? Maybe there's some last minute mental preparation, some reminders, some focus cues. And again, that little bit of physical preparation that might bring our energy up or down depending on where we are at that particular time. So just a few examples of what might work for you. The final area of mental preparation to consider is coming up with a list of what-ifs. Now, no one likes to think about things going wrong. But you know what? Sometimes things just go wrong. A slip, a flash knockdown, someone's forgotten their lucky socks, whatever it might be. So while we don't like to think about that stuff, having a plan in place just in case things do go wrong takes away the worry and the stress. I've seen it. I've seen the results of not considering the what-ifs before. A fighter gets knocked down early in the first round, but because they didn't want to consider that possibility beforehand, they didn't have a plan for it. So they panicked. They ended up blowing themselves out, trying to get a knockout in the first round, when actually there's a lot of time left in the fight. There's no need to try and get everything back straight away. Fall back on your plan for what if. So before your next camp or your next fight, just consider writing a list of what ifs and then write what you do in each circumstance. Then if you do forget your lucky socks, it won't affect you because you'll already have a plan in place.
Okay, so that's the end of Boxing Science TV, episode 11. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in. We've got a very special episode next week where myself and Alan will be reviewing the different projects, the different training methods and the different success stories of our boxers this year. And also across the Christmas period, we are going to be sharing different videos highlighting the best bits of 2017. So if you're interested in this and you don't want to miss out, just click the subscribe button below. And if you could please share Boxing Science TV, because we see this as an educational tool to try and make the best sport in the world even better. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next week.